Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Dr. Darren McGuire and I've been involved with the Strathclyde team and Glasgow Council for the voluntary sector on our series of workshops on developing impact in the voluntary sector. And today I'm going to provide a condensed summary of the research literacy and peer researcher introductory training that took place at the end of June. If anything in particular takes your interest in the video or you've got any further questions, please send us an email or reach out. We're happy to chat. So this was the second in a series of events, and the events finished in September this year. We looked at a range of different issues with the workshop, notably research and data literacy, accessing and understanding research, key research approaches and methods in the voluntary sector. We also looked at peer research training, and you had a go at conducting an oral history style interview. In addition to this, we looked at the sources and resources for research, and we had a bit of group discussion and reflection. But overall, I think the session went really well and raised lots of pertinent questions, and I hope that I can kind of get to the bottom of some of these just now. So why was research and data literacy important? Well, firstly, it's about evidence-based practice. It's about organisational performance and accountability. It's about professional development. But potentially most importantly, it's about giving you the tools for civic, social, community engagement and listening and capturing the voice of different communities. In terms of the overarching kind of like definition, if you like, we didn't go with a tried and tested definition of research literacy. For us, it was about the ability to locate, understand, discuss and evaluate different types of research and data, to communicate accurately about this type of data, to use findings effectively, and in the session we tried to break down some of the academic access barriers through vehicles like Google Scholar. One of my kind of key tips for today is that it's very easy to use and find some of the latest research, and you don't need academics necessarily to help you with this. You can type in Google Scholar into your toolbar and type in any topic, and it will return the latest papers that are publicly available on the topic. So that was a top tip from the session. Our starting point for the session was thinking about research design issues, so the kind of choices that you would have to make to develop an effective study. And research design is ultimately the framework of research methods and techniques chosen by a researcher or a research team. There's many methods available, there's many sources of data available, but a useful starting point for us was considering the research aim. What was the fundamental aim that you're interested in that would guide your research? Starting with a very clear aim affords you the chance to think about the kind of skeleton of your research and to develop a clear and effective research project. We then went into some of the key approaches in the voluntary sector, participatory action research. We talked about art-based methods, evaluation and case study research, and we even touched on ethnographic approaches and critical ethnography. The one thing that kind of stands out to me in terms of all these different approaches is probably participatory action research. That idea where you're trying to affect change. So that could be gathering some data and evidence on a topic, and then in addition to that, it would be assessing that data and information on a topic and taking your next step. And that kind of keeps on going on for until you feel like you've reached the kind of level of change that you're interested in. My one point here is that multiple sources of data are often better, collected over time, but these are quite resource intensive ideas, but definitely not too complicated, and you could most definitely make a start on participatory action research, because the voluntary sector and people across the voluntary sector have the values of participatory action research at their heart quite often. We, in particular on the kind of qualitative side, looked at a range of interview methods from structured to unstructured interviews, online, telephone interviews. We thought about observational techniques, focus groups, we spoke about the pros and cons. And we also talked about the reflections on the moderator role and when it was appropriate to use particular types of research over other types of research. We did a brief tour of quantitative research methods, but ultimately here we were talking about different types of statistical analysis. and often this is research that is of a numerical nature. This necessarily wasn't the focus of the talk, or rather the workshop, but if you want to chat about that, we would be delighted to. The practical element of this was about having a go at interviewing, and we used the 2023 materials from the Scottish Oral History Centre training for this. And the task was for you to conduct a brief oral history interview or participate in a brief interview. So we set up an interviewer and an interviewee, or rather a participant, sorry, and the aim was to ask participants about their life, their community in a short 10-minute interview. And I think some people found this challenging, some people found it really rewarding. From my point of view, it was absolutely fascinating to see how everyone managed the interview process. You definitely conducted yourselves properly, and I hope that the session was useful for you. You did great in a very short kind of space of time. The interview, the key thing for me, a good interview has to ask open-ended questions. Tell me about yourself. Why do you think this? How do you feel this? It's good practice to avoid leading or open questions. Asking one question at a time and being clear is also important. Interacting and responding. Depending on interview design, you might want to show that you are listening with people, that you empathise with people, and you can do that through your body language. You can show interest, you can encourage, you can nod, you can smile and so forth. You can maintain eye contact. You've also got to bear in mind the pace of the interview, not to rush the participants, to give them time to think and to pause and to reflect. It's okay to have some silences and some gaps. A top tip here is about ethics. Obviously, you need to respect the wishes of the participant and potentially not ask questions that could upset the participant at the same time. But look, there's a whole field of books and frameworks and ideas in and around how to conduct qualitative research and the interview, and Google Scholar is good for this. The internet more generally is great for this. But if you have specific questions about accessing different types of data or about understanding how to conduct particular types of interviews, then we'd be delighted to have a chat with you about this. In terms of reflections on the session, it seemed to me that it went well. There was lots of great questions about how to access different types of data. But I think what kind of came out of the session was that we're only really touching the tip of the iceberg on research data and literacy kind of issues. As a university, we are well placed to support the voluntary sector in accessing different types of information and also in analysing that data. But really this session was about giving you a kind of sense and a flavour of what collecting data might be like. So if you have any further questions on how to collect data or particular data issues that you're experiencing, or that you would like to set up a study or something like that, please just reach out to us through the usual email address. And thanks very much.